Thank you all for being here. Welcome to Life of Riley's March webinar, Community-Based Animal Protection, featuring Humane Action Pittsburgh. So I know a lot of us on this call and in the animal protection movement largely are really interested in passing animal protection laws. And we've probably spent a little bit of our careers at least working to pass those types of laws. So we know that that's a lot easier to do when our communities are really passionate about, interested in, and really supportive of animal issues. But how do you build that broad-based support for animal issues? And how do you kind of ensure your success with your public policy endeavors? So today we have Natalie Awesh, who is the Executive Director of Humane Action Pittsburgh, Shannon Dickerson, who is their Director of Operations, Dr. Daryl Payne, who is the Plastics Collaborative Program Manager for Humane Action Pittsburgh. This organization has passed 26 laws while operating a growing number of diverse programs across their communities. So I'm really excited for them to share with us today both their approach and their successes. Thank you, Natalie, Shannon, and Daryl for being here, and I will pass it on to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chaitana. And I'm all of a sudden stressed about this presentation because I have to share my screen and be the tech person. So please bear with me. Are you guys able to see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, thank you so much, Chaitana. Thank you everyone for being here. This is Building Bridges, Engaging the Community and Advancing Your Mission. Of course, we are in Pittsburgh, so we had to make a title that played on us being the city of bridges. Yeah, if you didn't know, Pittsburgh is considered the city of bridges. But anyway, we are an animal welfare organization, like I gather most, if not all of you are. But we have really diverse and robust campaigns, partially to ensure that any member of the community, like regardless if they consider themselves a quote unquote animal person, can find a place within our organization that then in turn helps us to advance our mission of animal protection. And of course, we're going to talk a lot more about that later. So thank you, Chaitana, for that wonderful intro. As she mentioned, I am Natalie Awesh. I'm the Executive Director of Humane Action Pittsburgh. I've been with the organization since we were founded in 2015. And, I'm not sure about everybody on this call, but I started just as a volunteer, someone passionate about animal welfare. I didn't have any, formal training or education. I was a math teacher, but I am so happy that I've been able to take my passion and, learn kind of just on the job and turn that into a career. And I'm so thankful to be joined today by my colleagues, Shannon and Daryl, who are going to be speaking in a little bit. So just a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. So we'll give you a little bit of background about our organization, just really for context, briefly discuss our departments and some of our campaigns to show how we can engage non-traditional animal advocates through those. And then really focus in on our core values and how each of those strive to really engage a diverse cross-sector of the community. So first, a quick introduction, a brief overview of Humane Action Pittsburgh, and that's me with Pittsburgh's Mayor Ed Gainey. As you'll see throughout our presentation, we really try to build relationships with anyone and everyone that can help us advance our mission. But we especially try to build relationships with legislators. That's something that we're always striving to foster, nurture, and do better. So we were founded in 2015. We became an official 501c3 nonprofit in 2019. As Chaitana mentioned, we have initiated and passed 26 animal protection laws. Some of those include Pennsylvania's first retail sales ban on dogs, cats, and rabbits that are not coming from shelters and rescues to be sold in pet stores. Pennsylvania's first circus animal protections, our bullhook ban got the circus effectively kicked out in Pittsburgh, which is probably my favorite victory. And that picture is actually myself and our founder standing outside City Council the day that the bill passed. Most recently, in December of 2023, we passed a ban on foie gras, or products made from force-feeding animals, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later. And we were also instrumental in passing Pittsburgh's plastic bag ban. We have 4 departments. Our first is our regional initiatives, which are initiatives that focus on the region. Go figure. We have Humane Action Pennsylvania, which is our state and federal affairs department. Compassionate Living, that's our farm animal protection campaign. And then Habitat Regeneration, which it is an environmental advocacy department, but we are looking at protecting the environment through the lens of animal protection. So how does protecting our habitats also protect animals? So I just really want to highlight some of the programs within our departments that we are particularly, I think, adept at engaging those diverse members of the community, as I said. So the first one I want to highlight in our regional initiatives, that's our Love Your Wild Neighbor campaign. I don't know, I love this graphic. Every time I look at it, that's Hap, the raccoon. We were really creative in naming him. But anyway, so this campaign is aimed at saving urban wildlife from being trapped and killed. So Pittsburgh basically has a policy: if you see an animal, a wildlife species in your yard, and you don't want it there for whatever reason, you can just call our animal care and control, and they will, for free, well, at taxpayer expense, send a trap to get the animal. And then by state law, rabies vector species like raccoons, skunks, and groundhogs have to be killed. So we're killing hundreds and hundreds of animals every year without getting to the root of why these conflicts are occurring. The majority of wildlife conflicts occur from trash, from people improperly storing their trash, and that's drawing these animals there. So this campaign, I don't want to get too into the weeds in it, but what I love about it is we've been able to partner with people interested in community beautification that don't necessarily care about wildlife or protecting wildlife at all. So you can see on this poster, we partnered actually with the city of Pittsburgh to put up bus ads and other, means of marketing the campaign to educate residents on humane alternatives to trapping that actually work. And we've also partnered with other community beautification organizations on that campaign. We do a lot of trainings for law enforcement officials like police departments to teach them about, the link between animal abuse and violence against humans, and what are the laws that exist for animals in Pennsylvania, and how do they work with interagencies to enforce laws and help people and their pets. And we also have a lot of resources that we've created for pet owners. So specifically people in low-income communities that might need assistance with low-cost spay and neuter or veterinary care or food, the unhoused, survivors of domestic violence and their pets. And we disseminate those to law enforcement agencies, human and animal shelters, churches, food banks, really anywhere else members of those communities in need might come across them. Humane Action Pennsylvania, as I mentioned, that's our state and federal affairs department. Right now, our main priority is Pennsylvania's House Bill 1210. That is a bill that would allow judges to include companion animals in protection from abuse orders for domestic violence victims. Right now, Pennsylvania is one of the few states in the country where judges don't have that discretion. We've been able to engage so many non-traditional animal advocates through this bill. We've collected policy endorsements and hosted educational webinars that include, law enforcement, like sheriff's associations, district attorneys' offices. The Attorney General of Pennsylvania actually has supported us on this bill. And then also a lot of people and organizations working with children and survivors of domestic violence. Our Compassionate Living department, as I mentioned, that one's for farm animal protection. I really think farm animals are, in my experience, are the hardest to advocate for. Nobody wants to be told what to eat. So while, the egregious cruelty that farm animals endure in our food system, we don't gloss over it in our work by any means, but we often try to get our foot in the door or initially engage people in this department by talking about how plant-based diets are best for human health and also the environment. So this picture, this is from our Heart of a Hero program, which has now been rebranded as Get Healthy Pittsburgh. But we partnered initially with the city. Now it's open for the whole community. But basically what happens is people are able to come and be challenged to go on a plant-based diet for 7 days. And then before the program and after, they receive biometric screenings so they can tangibly see how their health improves after adopting this diet for just 7 days. The results, we've had this program 3 years now, are always so amazing. I mean, people are like, they open their results and see, how their cholesterol and blood pressure and stuff dropped, and they're crying, they're jumping up and down, screaming. It's really, really exciting and amazing. But our thought is, we hope we can open up people's minds to a compassionate way of eating by showing how it's best for them, right? What's in it for me? And then we can sprinkle in that ethicality of the diet to see, hopefully long-term sustainable change. And then finally, our habitat regeneration department, which is focused on environmental sustainability, but through the lens of animal protection. We do have several campaigns within the department, but I wanted to highlight the two that are led by Daryl and Shannon. So Daryl, could you talk a little bit about the Plastics Collaborative?
Sure can. Thank you, Natalie. Hi, everyone. My name is Daryl Payne, and like Natalie mentioned, I am the program manager for the Plastics Collaborative. And just like it said, the collaborative, we are a network of representatives that make up a diverse sector of community groups, nonprofits, businesses, and local governments. And our whole goal is to reduce single-use plastics within the Pittsburgh region and beyond. So we're really excited about the work that we've done so far, and we're also really excited about driving positive change for the future.
And I'm Shannon Dickerson. Like Natalie was saying, Hap Hive is kind of my baby. So we work on behalf of all animals at Humane Action Pittsburgh, and pollinators are certainly part of that. So there are a number of different facets of this campaign, but the one that has really engaged the community is that we take vacant lots and turn them into pollinator gardens. And it's just been wonderfully successful. People who have never heard of Humane Action Pittsburgh, and maybe if they just heard our mission, wouldn't be as interested in connecting with us, are coming, out of the woodwork to volunteer at these gardens, donate seeds, gotten really, sweet emails from an elderly woman who is like, I can't come and volunteer myself, but will you come into my house and pick up these seeds to put in the garden? And just really lovely things like that. So yeah, it's been wonderful in connecting with the community. And then of course, protecting pollinators who are so important to our ecosystem.
Thanks, Shannon. So what we really want to dive into today are our core values and how we really, with each one, strive to engage non-traditional animal advocates in the community. So the first is setting the standard. So what does that mean, or what does it mean to us? Well, for one, it means progress over perfection. This is a really important value to us. We believe perfect can be the enemy of the good. So, we would love it if everybody went vegan overnight, but that's probably not going to happen. So we try to just advocate for meaningful changes to improve the welfare of animals, such as banning the most egregious forms of farm animal cruelty. And an example of that would be our ban on force-fed animal products that I mentioned earlier, like foie gras that we passed in December. So a lot of people, especially, well, actually, I shouldn't even say especially in the animal community, people in the animal community, but also the legislators that we were working with when we took this idea to them, they said, well, why do you just want to ban foie gras? Why not veal or other products that come from animals in crates? And I mean, the answer is we would love to do that, but that's probably not going to be able to pass, right? So we want to pick battles that we feel like we can win. This is also this idea of progress over perfection. It's a tactic that we take with the Pittsburgh Zoo. I mean, as an organization, we do not believe in keeping animals in captivity. But we know that the Pittsburgh Zoo is here, and at least for the time being, it's here to stay. So we just want to make sure that while it is here, they're adhering to the most humane and ethical standards that zoos have. I really feel that this idea of progress over perfection is a huge reason of why we've been able to be so successful in building relationships, especially with legislators and other decision makers, because they value organizations that can compromise and also work together with people that don't necessarily agree with them all the time. I really don't think any of the legislation we've passed, maybe Shannon, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think any of the legislation we've passed has been exactly what we intended or wanted from the beginning. But by understanding that, some change is better than none, we've been able to significantly move the needle. Setting the standard to us also means changing course when needed. So one of the things I love most about Humane Action Pittsburgh is we really haven't been able to find any other groups out there doing exactly what we're doing. Of course, that being said, that comes at the expense of not really having a guidebook. So there have been times when, we've dedicated time and resources to a campaign and then seen like it's not really working. And so we try not to see that as a failure, but more of a proof of our ability to stay nimble and flexible. And I'll give you an example. A few years ago, we wanted to start a campaign for betta fish. Betta fish are those fish that are kept in really, really tiny, tiny jars at pet stores. We wanted to get pet stores to stop selling them. The process of harvesting them, transporting them, and keeping them is inhumane. But we really quickly saw that we were not going to be successful. And so while we do still, have information on our website and stuff available for people, it's not something that we're going to dedicate, at least for the time being, much time and energy to. We're prepared and well-researched. So, if you want to represent yourselves as experts in your field, whether it's to legislators, community members, or whoever, you really have to walk the walk. None of our leadership at HAP was formally educated on animal welfare, but we've been able to, consult with experts, and Spring Point has been so wonderful at connecting us with a lot of those experts, and conduct extensive research so that we are able to become those experts. Of course, that being said, we acknowledge that we're always learning and growing, and that's a good thing. And then finally, being well connected. So, I mentioned we're always well researched, of course, but we also know a lot of times it's not what you know, but who you know. And so we've done a lot of work in building relationships, just really wherever we can. And that's enabled us to kind of have like a 6 degrees or maybe more like a 2 to 3 degrees of separation situation that's really proven valuable to us. And it's another reason that we really try to interconnect with so many other issues in the community outside of the obvious, like animal welfare, like environment and humans, because it helps us to widen our circle of influence. Shannon, I want to pass it to you, please, to talk about our next core value.
Thank you so much. So we give a similar presentation, at least going over our core values when we bring on, new volunteers, staff members, anyone who's working with HAP. And I love talking about this core value with people because, to build relationships, obviously trust is so important and is at the heart of, any relationship that's really going to be fruitful for all the parties involved. So, when we say inclusivity, obviously being non-discriminatory in traditional ways that you're thinking of are included in this, and that's very important and a guiding principle for our organization. But we're also talking about including people, as Natalie said many times, who are perhaps non-traditional animal advocates, and reaching out across the aisle to those who might not necessarily be interested in our cause and not writing them off because of that. So many times people think they can't develop relationships with a group or, someone who they just don't think will be interested because they don't ask or they don't try. So we really try to make sure that we're not writing people off before we even build that relationship. Natalie's also touched on this, but just diving a little deeper into it. As a nonprofit, we're nonpartisan, we don't endorse candidates or anything like that. But we've definitely found that it's really important to actively pursue relationships with, people from all different backgrounds and parties. I certainly have my own personal convictions and feel very strongly about certain things politically. But in order for us to have that progress and not perfection, we really have to work with everyone and be able to have those conversations. And we might be the only people that they've ever talked to who are willing to have those conversations and go set up a meeting with them. And so we have to, represent our cause to, you know, a legislator who might never care about animal issues. And you really never know who's going to be willing to discuss and sit down with you. And if you look at our history and who we've worked with, it actually might surprise some people, you know, the parties they're from and what we've been able to get done by doing that. This next one is so important, and I just really want to give a shout out, obviously, to SpringPoint and probably some others in the room. But anti-racist practices, I mean, it's something that I think a lot of organizations might be, you know, either uncomfortable talking about or just not know how to address it. And I can't say enough about the Care Ready certification. I put that logo on this slide because it helped us not only obviously learn just invaluable tactics to employ for building relationships and just operating our organization, but, you know, really opening up the conversation so that we're able to make sure that this is not something that we talk about, but something that we actually do on a daily basis, and making sure that everyone feels like they have a seat at the table, they're welcome with our organization, and that we can have a relationship with them that goes both ways. Visible community engagement. I mean, it's important to showcase our positive visibility in the community. So we have, you know, I said the pollinator garden earlier. Having things like that where people can physically show up and be involved is so important. We have the Get Healthy Pittsburgh or Heart of a Hero program Natalie was talking about, showing people, you know, that we care about them, we care about their health. Chaitana actually made a casual comment one time when we were in a meeting with her, and she said, you know, at its heart, HAP is a community group. And I loved that, and it stuck with me and resonated with me so much because I didn't necessarily define us that way or think of it that way before. And now I exclusively think of us that way. You know, we are here for all animals, and, you know, that includes people and their well-being. And I think that when you can connect with people like that and show them that, it makes a huge difference and goes a long way in them taking interest in whatever your mission is and what you're trying to accomplish. And then, of course, challenges. We are faced with challenges all the time in, you know, building these relationships, and a lot of them come from your own assumptions. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't external challenges. Of course there are, and you need to work through those. But you want to enter these relationships or these opportunities for relationships without making judgments before you even speak to someone or try to reach out to them. And I think that, you know, sharing experiences from the past, you know, having those community engagement opportunities where people can actually see the community showing up and supporting you, that goes a long way to building new relationships for people who might have been skeptical to begin with. Natalie, do you mind advancing? Thanks. And so our next one is fostering empowerment. So this one is so important because I think that we want people to know that no matter what capacity we're working with you, whether you're a partner organization, you're a legislator that we're, you know, trying to advance some legislation with, you're a volunteer within our own organization, we are not interested in giving you a laundry list of things that we want and need from you, getting that, and then walking away. That would totally negate the last slide of building a trusted relationship. But in order to do that, we need to show people that we want to empower them. We want people to feel like they have a seat at the table, that they have a voice, and that we value what they have to say to us. So having a free and creative culture, that might be a little vague. And I mean, you know, maybe deliberately so, that can change and mean different things in different circumstances. I'm very proud of the fact that we did have an issue where someone in our organization felt uncomfortable with something someone else said. And in a lot of organizations, that could have gone a lot of different ways. That person felt so comfortable to come to both Natalie and myself and say, hey, this happened. This is how I feel. How do we work through this? And it was, you know, an amazing opportunity for us to have a real discussion about it and not just have it, you know, be swept under the rug, because we feel like our culture allows for conversations like that and open doors to happen. Having respect for diverse perspectives. You have to listen. You can't shut people down who disagree with you. And listening means actually taking into account what they're saying and not just waiting for them to stop so you can make your points to them. When Natalie talked about, you know, changing direction, a lot of that has to do with feedback, either from our own volunteers or outside sources, where we've taken, their expertise and their opinions seriously. Supplying tools for leadership. The Care Ready training is a great example of this, making sure that our volunteer team and everyone who's involved with the organization at the time we're doing the training, it wasn't just for myself and Natalie, it was for everyone. We want to empower all of our groups to be trained professionally. We try to do classes for professional development, but we're also trying to offer things to our volunteers and people in the community to make sure that they're getting education, that they're getting tools for success, and just really asking them like, hey, what is it that you need? What would you like from us? And finding the connections, making those connections to provide that to them. It's really important that we don't just go into a situation and say, hey, here, we have this. This is for you, take it. But the first step is, actually asking them, what do you need? And then trying to fill that need and not just hand something off to them because we think it's what they need. And then a volunteer leadership model, we were an all volunteer organization up until 2022. So Natalie and I came on as paid employees in June of that year, but it was always, so important and well known that volunteers were the backbone of the organization, even after we had paid staff. And so we like to amplify the voices of our volunteers, make sure that they have responsibilities where they know that what they're doing is important. And when they have that kind of responsibility and ownership, it really helps them feel like a leader within the organization and to be empowered in that way. And then, reflecting on our impact. We encourage participants to reflect on how their empowerment and leadership within HAP contribute to the organization's overall goals. We want to make sure that we are asking for how that's, kind of landing, and take that information and change our course or, really put into practice what we're learning from others. We talk about, how fostering empowerment enhances individual satisfaction, strengthens our capacity to make meaningful impact. At the end of the day, our mission is about the animals, but if we're not including other people in this conversation, if it's not about humans too, we're not going to be successful in that mission. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Daryl.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a great segue. Thank you, Shannon. So if you can see on the slide here, one of the things that I'll just give you some insights into what I was thinking about when I created this slide. I wanted to put together a whole bunch of bullet points and who we are as a Plastics Collaborative and what we've accomplished. But then I took a step back and I thought about creating community. And I thought this word map was very, very intentional about who we are as a Plastics Collaborative as it relates to creating community. If you look at some of the words that's listed here in this word map, it says positive and belonging, satisfaction, membership, trust, and goals. These are sort of like the tenets that drive us within the collaborative. And like I mentioned before, part of the collaborative is to, build that relationship building and bring the community together so we can talk about how we can make a difference, how we can make a change, how we can move the needle as a community as it relates to reducing plastics within the region. And we're not just talking about it, but as Natalie mentioned a few minutes ago, we are very intentional about the research that we've done as it relates to reducing plastics within the region. And that research has shown us that it's very important to ensure that the community is involved. So when we created our strategic plan as it relates to our goals and objectives, we used the research with the voices and the input from the community to come up with those goals and those objectives for our Plastics Collaborative and what we're trying to accomplish for the next 1 year up to 3 years. So I'll just take a few minutes to talk about some of those goals. One of them is definitely creating partnerships. And when I say by creating partnerships, we create partnerships by partnering with local universities to sort of like use information technology to help us move the needle on reducing single-use plastics within the region as well as beyond. The second goal we have is creating partnerships with local businesses. I'm so excited about this. I stutter when I talk about it. Creating partnerships with local businesses. We feel that we need to make sure when we're building and creating that community that we have the voice of the businesses, because they're the ones sort of like on the front line when it comes to helping us reduce plastics within the region. The third goal is public awareness. And this one is very important because this is the one that kind of like goes to the meat of who we are as a collaborative. And when I say about public awareness, I mean identifying the community, identifying, low income communities or communities of colors to ensure that everyone's voice is at the table when we're making decisions, when we're looking and knocking on the doors of public makers or policy makers. We want to make sure that everyone's voice is at the table so they can give their input on how we should move forward as we drive this change for reducing single-use plastics within the community. And then the last one is I kept mentioning that we're looking at the local region, Pittsburgh, but we want to go beyond. We want to look at the lessons learned and the best practices that we've learned when we are creating communities, when we do get at the table and everyone is providing their input and everyone's providing their voices as to what we can do together as a coalition to make a change in reducing plastics. We want to take those lessons learned and those best practices and share them beyond the Pittsburgh region. Share them with other municipalities and other cities, so together we can build community, not just within the city of Pittsburgh, but also beyond. So we're very excited about creating community as it relates to the Plastics Collaborative, as it relates to HAP as a whole. And again, I believe this work map touches everything as far as creating community and what we are focusing on. We are focusing on making positive environmental changes for everyone that is a part of the community. And part of that as well is developing and building our membership as it relates to being a part of the collaborative. Thank you very much for your time and allowing me to talk about the collaborative.
Thanks, Daryl. Our final core value, delivering results. So, we want to make sure the campaigns and the programs we're taking on are actually helping us to advance our mission of saving animals. We found more often than not, actually, that we can get what we want, or at least, start on the path to getting what we want just by asking for it. So we always start with pretty ambitious, but clearly defined short and long-term goals, understanding we're probably going to have to compromise along the way, and are really mindful to work in a systematic and organized, well-constructed manner to see those goals through. And then finally, we do always use effective altruism as a guiding principle. While it sometimes might not be obvious, though, everyone wants to get the best return on investment. We want to help the most animals possible in our efforts. Why do I say it's not necessarily obvious in our work all of the time? Well, we do understand that we're playing a long game. So short-term goals that might not obviously adhere to effective altruism for us are a means to an end that is. So let me give you an example. I think I brought up now 4 times our recent victory of banning force-fed animal products like foie gras in the city. That really likely won't end up saving more than just a few animals. Foie gras is not that popular in Pittsburgh to begin with, so the ban only affected a few restaurants. But that being said, a groundbreaking ordinance like this, Pittsburgh is one of the first cities in the country to pass this legislation. The idea is that hopefully it's going to lead to a ripple effect. So, more places passing foie gras bans. So, okay, if it's just, the state of California, Pittsburgh, and a couple other places, as we can grow that, eventually maybe it would become the whole country. Also, just more people being exposed to the cruel realities of factory farming practices. So I've had so many discussions with people since this bill was introduced that just can't believe this goes on. I mean, a lot of people I talked to have never even heard of foie gras. Like, what is that? So it's really opened the door to having some really great conversations. And also attention from media and the public that will hopefully translate into more funds that will allow us to continue our mission of saving, more and more animals. So we want to be here for a long time. I assume the people on this call feel the same way. And as much as I would love it if just 100% of everything was solely mission focused, like you have to raise the money, right? So that was one of our hopes with passing this legislation, is it would be able to set us apart from other groups as the group that, could get this done. So anyway, all of that being said, effective altruism is something that we always keep in mind in our work. On that note, I've done a lot of talking, and we would love to open it up to any questions. Or sorry, Chetan, I forget, maybe I'm supposed to throw it back to you.
Nope. We can definitely open it up to questions. So feel free, everyone, you can just unmute yourself, shout your question out. You want to raise your hand, or you can put it in the chat box. We're also watching the chat box, so please engage. And while people are doing that, I'd love to hear from all of you of, what has it been like? You've talked a little bit about bringing people who necessarily didn't see themselves as animal people into this movement, because your programs are so wide-ranging. So can you maybe tell us a story or give us an example, or just talk a little bit more about that piece of it, of just drawing people who might not really identify in that way as an animal person, and bringing them into Humane Action Pittsburgh?
Well, I can speak to what first popped into my mind is actually, believe it or not, a lot of our volunteer team. So you would think that the people who are volunteers with us are the ones who are like 100% on board with our mission. Why would they volunteer and not be? But it's surprising, like people have come to us for Hap Hive. A lot of people have come to us because of our work with plastics. They're very, very concerned about climate change, pollution, our environmental impact with, litter, especially single-use plastics litter. And so, they're on our volunteer team. They're doing awesome work for us, whether it's on our website team, our graphics team, our social media team. And, they're very passionate about our cause, and it kind of, I guess you could say, like, grows with them as they get more entrenched with the organization. But came to us because of a specific campaign that maybe doesn't actually fit into if you're just looking at our mission and exactly what that line states. So it's surprising that way. But yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, I would agree with Shannon, if I can just add. And I can tell you the reason why I came on, not only because, of course, I love animals, who doesn't, right? But I think about my children. My children and the generations behind me is going to be impacted by the work that we're doing today for reducing single-use plastic. So I think that is, for me, is one of the most is on the top of the list for me as a priority to be involved with this work, because it will impact generations behind me, and hopefully we can move that needle so we can pass the baton on to make it a lot easier for the generation behind us to move forward with this work.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything Shannon and Daryl said, but just to throw out another experience or perspective, I would actually say most of the legislators that we've worked with are not really super passionate animal people. I don't want to, of course, speak for them. But I think one of the things we're really great at, as we've kind of been discussing today, animal issues are so interconnected with so many other things. And so we are really good when we're pitching an idea to a legislator or just trying to get them to support or oppose something that's out there, at bringing all of those non-animal elements to it. So, connecting it with the economy, or, human health and the environment we talked a lot about, or just the fact that animal issues tend to be nonpartisan. And so it can just be a good way to, progress a bill, get something on your resume to show that you're doing something. And it's probably not going to make anybody too upset, especially if it's for, puppies and kittens. Chaitana, you're muted.
Sorry. Well, while we're waiting for more questions, again, encouraging people to chime in, I had another question. Is your volunteer model is really interesting, because again, it doesn't feel like people just kind of come in and do what you tell them to do. There seems to be a lot of opportunity for your volunteers to lead, and to really put kind of their own perspective and their own passion into these initiatives. That kind of feels scary too. Like, how do you manage that? Because does it feel like you're losing control because you have so many voices at the table? And so much of what you said was about bringing diverse voices to the table. And that's so hard to do because, you want to get stuff done. And you're like, this is what we're going to do. And this is how we're going to get it done. And sometimes bringing lots of voices and lots of opinions and, like creating space for lots of people to do work. Some people might think that would slow you down. So can you reflect on that a little bit?
I think that we are definitely very good at managing volunteer expectations right from the onset. And mostly that's just come from the experience of, sometimes having to shut volunteers' ideas down. So, we definitely have that culture, and we want to maintain that culture of everybody being comfortable to, express their opinions on things and share their views. But, we can't always run with everything, or there might just be reasons that we can't, go with an idea that a volunteer has because of some experience that we had 8 years ago that we would never expect them to know, right? So we're always very mindful in our trainings and onboarding volunteers to say, hey, we can't always run with the ideas that you have, and we'll do our best to explain why if it and when it comes to that, but that by no means should influence your comfort in being able to bring those ideas to the table. Shannon, you work a lot with our volunteers, so you probably have something to add.
I mean, certainly agree with everything you just said. And, I think that when we go back to that fostering empowerment piece, I think that people are just understanding of you, for lack of a better term, like shutting down their ideas or redirecting maybe, when they know that you do care about what they have to say, and you're giving them feedback that they might not necessarily want or expect because you're coming from a place of wanting the best for the organization, a place of experience, and you have that foundation of them knowing that they matter to you. And so it's not a reflection of whether or not they've had a good or a bad idea, and it has nothing to do with how, we feel about them as a volunteer or what they're bringing to the table. It's just a matter of, the collective experience and us knowing like, hey, we've tried that. You weren't here for that. Let me tell you a little bit how it went, and maybe we can redirect and even connect it to, but we are going to do this and see how that feeds into it. Like, how does that sound to you? None of that matters if you haven't really established that, kind of value-based relationship with them to begin with.
Thank you. We have a lot of questions that are now coming up, so I'm just going to start reading them from the chat box. The first question is from Madison from Animal Humane New Mexico, and she wants to know if you've had any experience kind of creating and implementing a community needs assessment. So how can you give us advice on how we could better go about understanding what our communities actually need as it relates to all of these issues?
Yeah, I don't know that we've done anything incredibly formal, but just in having all of these relationships and connections that we talked about earlier, like we have an ongoing dialogue with, our city government, so city council, the mayor's office, our animal care and control, our local rescues and shelters. And, because of our robust programming related to, companion animals, wildlife, farm animals, the environment, over our past, I guess it's almost 9 years at this point, we've really been able to work with these people, these organizations, and show them that we do want to hear what they have to say. So a lot of times we're finding out about community needs just by these groups that we have these well-established relationships reaching out and telling us. Or, if we have an idea for a new program, where especially as Daryl was talking to, I mean, with the Plastics Collaborative, but really it could relate to anything. We take that to the people that it will affect, or the people that have experience in working with the communities that will affect, to, ensure that we're on the right track.
I love.
Yeah,
Oh, I was
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that. Essentially, we are doing a community needs assessment when we do have a diverse network representing the community in the room together. So when people bring up ideas, we are taking those ideas and we're flushing them with policymakers, we're flushing them with other community organizations to ensure that we are going forward with what the needs of the communities are. So I agree with Natalie. We're not officially like sending out surveys or whatnot, but we are literally using a methodology and a process to identify those needs when we're getting a room together to ensure that every community is represented when we work together as a collaborative. That's a great question, by the way.
I love that because I think a lot of us are in animal protection organizations where we don't have those direct relationships with community. And then you kind of forget that actually there's a lot of other great groups on the ground who do have those direct connections with community, and building those partnerships as you all have done is so critical. Next question is from Alini from CARE. I see a lot of folks getting on board for animals in the environment, but when we include advocating for humans living with suffering animals, it becomes tricky. So can you speak a little bit about getting folks on board to care about human as well as animal well-being? And she kind of added more thoughts of especially thinking of folks who are experiencing homelessness or other types of housing insecurity.
Yeah, this is actually, I'm going to say, an issue that is relatively new for us. I think, we've had to address it. I mean, we've wanted to talk about it, but we've also had to because it is becoming more an issue in Pittsburgh. And so we have started, well, maybe in the past year or so, having more conversations specifically about this with, law enforcement agencies that are oftentimes, connecting and contacting these people, animal-based rescues that are specifically in place for animals in crisis. So we actually just formed, I'm going to call it somewhat of an official partnership with a group called Harmony Dog Rescue that specifically exists to help pets in crisis. And we worked with them on researching all of the different help available in Allegheny County. That's where Pittsburgh is, to help people in crisis. And I mentioned earlier that we were, disseminating these resources to churches, food banks, all of these different places. So sorry, I feel like getting away from what the actual question was, but it's something that is new to us, and we're learning a lot as we work in the space. I don't know if that's exactly hitting on what the question was. Sorry.
Well, I think I just add to that, everything Natalie said is correct, but also going back to, engage the people who do care about humans, if that's who you're trying to get on board, and then they become those non-traditional animal advocates, right? So a lot of the groups that Natalie's talked about and mentioned even earlier in the presentation do not have any kind of mission-based interest in animals or even the environment necessarily. But if you reach out to them and say, hey, I'm this group, this is what we're doing, and this is why we want to connect with you, and kind of, connect those dots for them, then they can be brought into the conversation. And then people who are interested in their mission all of a sudden become advocates of your organization.
Thank you. Another question is from Gary Evans, and he was really impressed with your kind of organizational philosophy and your perspective. Do you find that finding teammates that buy into your perspectives is more about recruiting well, training them, or kind of an equal combo of both?
I feel like overall we've been lucky, or maybe it hasn't been luck. Maybe it's been the messaging that we put out in the recruitment process, in finding people that, we have a really diverse team, diverse in terms of, race, religion, age, gender, political spectrum. But it does seem like the people that we have on the team, when we're talking about, our values of being, nonpartisan and creating community and all of those things that we talked about, I think that they do resonate with people. Of course, over the years, especially in the beginning of our organization, when we didn't necessarily have this all as, figured out or, cohesive as we do now, we got some people who, for whatever reason, it just didn't work out because of those philosophical differences. But I really feel like people tend to think of us as kind of a breath of fresh air, maybe from the like quote unquote typical animal welfare or environmental advocacy group that they would think of. Daryl and Shannon, please add on.
Yeah, so being a new kid on the block, I'll just jump in. And what I mean by new kid on the block, I'm the newest hire for HAP. I can honestly tell you that HAP walks the walk and talks the talk. I did a lot of research on HAP before I came on board, and what HAP says they do, they do. And even talking to people who have worked with HAP in the past, it's evident that they walk the walk and talk the talk. And I think because of that, it makes them stand out. And it's been great. And me being able to work with HAP, it's been easy to build networks because people already know who HAP is, and they have literally opened that door, which made my job a bit easier to be able to connect those dots as it applies to the Plastics Collaborative.
Shannon, did you want to add to that before I?
Just thanks, Daryl.
Sure.
That was nice.
There are a lot of great resources in the chat. So as we close out, please, everyone take a look at the chat. There is a really great conference that's been advertised as well as just some really great thoughts and inputs from other people on the call. Thank you, Natalie and Shannon and Daryl, for this great presentation. This is, it's kind of a dream. I think it's kind of where we really want to see animal protection going in the future. Is we want more and more people to be a part of our movement and to connect to our movement. And I think just we have to be really intentional about creating space for other people to join our movement. And I've so enjoyed watching your journey as you kind of become that organization that's a leader in this space. So thank you. It's been really great for me. As always, everyone, I will send a link for the recording for this presentation, Humane Action Pittsburgh's website, and the bios of all three of today's esteemed speakers in the follow-up email. It was really great, again, to have the opportunity to hear about the ways in which an animal protection organization is not only advancing laws for animals, but also caring for their human communities at the same time. And at our next webinar on April 25th, Akeisha Townsend-Eaton and Alini Silva from CARE will share examples of social justice organizations who have been advancing animal protections in the course of doing their work. It's such a great follow-on to today's webinar in that it once again shows us that caring for our human communities only strengthens our ability to help animals, and advocating for animals takes nothing away from our efforts to advocate for our own human communities. So keep doing great things in the community, all of you, and I'll see you next month. You'll find the link for next month's webinar in the follow-up email. And always you'll find it on our website at lor.dog. So thank you everyone for joining us today. It was great seeing all of you. And thank you again, Humane Action Pittsburgh, for your great work and for sharing your work with us today.